what's up everybody? I'm Jesse.
And I'm Katie. Welcome to part 2 of Scroll View School. In this part, we'll continue our exploration of scroll views by covering a lot of common uses, sticking points, and edge cases. For instance, say you have an existing layout and need to embed it in a scroll view, but preserve all of your constraints. How do you do that? What about nesting scroll views inside of other scroll views? How can you make scroll views automatically adjust when a keyboard is presented to keep text fields in view? And what about flipping through pages of content? Can a scroll view handle that? Find out the answers to all of these questions and more as we continue scrolling along. So far in this course, we've been building our layouts with a scroll view in mind. There will be times when you already have a layout in place and later find you need to embed it in a scroll view. Xcode does provide a way to embed layouts into scroll views in Interface Builder, but it's not as straightforward as you'd hope. Let's take a look at an example and work through it together. We have a simple, familiar layout here with an image, a label, and text view wrapped in a stack view. Let's say later on in the development process, the description in this text view has gotten really long, and we've decided we need to convert this to a scroll view. Can we just embed this whole view that we've set up in a scroll view?
Let's try it. Select the view and go to the Embed In button and you can't select scroll view. You could select the stack view and embed that in a scroll view. But the problem with doing that is it's going to remove all of the existing constraints.
If we had a more involved layout, that would be a huge waste of time to recreate all the constraints, so let's try to preserve them instead. Undo that embedding, and select the view in the document outline and drag it out of the view controller to place it temporarily in the scene dock. If you look at the size inspector, you'll see that all of your constraints are still preserved. Now, the view controller needs another root view, so just drag one in from the object library. And then add a scroll view to it. And constrain that scroll view on all 4 sides as usual. Now we can take our existing view and drag it back to be a child of the scroll view. We do need to add constraints from this view to the scroll view, so pin it on all 4 sides with the Add New Constraints menu, and make it equal widths with the scroll view.
That's most of our work done. You can see this process has preserved the constraints on the stack view and the proportional size constraints on the toucan image and the text view. But what we have right now are 2 safe areas. We really only need the one attached to the root view, but many of our constraints are attached to this nested safe area. Select the view holding your stack view, and in the size inspector, turn off the safe area layout guide. Your layout should still be intact. If you remove the safe area from a view, constraints that had been attached to the safe area will attach themselves to the view of that safe area instead. Because our view is constrained to the scroll view, and that is constrained to the safe area, everything will look exactly the same.
You can see that there's not exactly a drag and drop solution for embedding a layout in a scroll view. But if you commit to adding a few more constraints, it's better than having to reconstrain all of your views, especially when working with complicated layouts.
You've already seen how to add several kinds of subviews to a scroll view. Adding a scroll view to a scroll view isn't much different, but nesting scroll views that scroll along different axes can be challenging to work with in one view controller. In a case where you have a tall vertical scroll view, you can set up a container view so that there is a separate view controller for the horizontal content. Using embedded, separate view controllers like this can make it much easier to visually design nested scroll views because you can make them wildly different sizes without affecting one another. Let's give it a try.
We've got this very tall About view controller for Flappy Felipe. You can see in the middle of it here, we have a container view. Right now, it's purple, but this is where we're going to put a horizontal scroll view to display icons for a bunch of other apps. To get started, grab a new view controller from the object library. In the Attributes Inspector, name this view controller R Apps. And go to the Size Inspector. Set it to be freeform with a width of 800 and a height of 100. We won't need a safe area on this new view controller, so select the root view, and in the size inspector, uncheck that box. If you followed along with demystifying views, you've used a container view controller before. we're going to use an embed segue just as we showed you in that course. Control-click and drag from the container to the new view controller to create the segue, and choose Embed.
Now let's add some content to this view controller. The first thing we need is a scroll view, so add one from the object library. And pin it to all sides of the view with the Add New Constraints menu. We're ready to add icons for all of our apps. Start by adding one image view. Set the image to Instant Poetry. And set the content mode to Aspect Fit. Then set up a 1:1 aspect ratio constraint to keep it square. Now make 5 copies of that image view. I'll do that by holding Option and dragging 5 times. We don't want 5 of the same icon, so set the images to Level Me Up, Math Ninja, RPG Calc, Wild Fables, and Battle Map. To constrain all of those images, embed them in a stack view. Then constrain that stack view by pinning all of the sides to the scroll view, adding 20 points to the leading and trailing edges. And finally set the height to be equal to the view's height. Go ahead and give the stack view standard spacing too, so there's a little room between images. Our embedded view controller is all set up now with its own scroll view content, so let's try to build and run the app. We can't see our embedded view at all.
And that's because the height of that view isn't defined. Remember, this vertical scroll view needs the width and height of every view inside of it to be defined. In the size inspector, we can see that our container view has a width constraint, but there isn't one for height. Go ahead and create one and set it to 100. Build and run one more time and scroll down to see that nested scroll view.
We can see it, and you can scroll horizontally.
When working with scroll views, you might find you want a little extra space around the content inside. You can use the scroll view's content inset property to add padding around scrolling content. The total scroll area increases as you increase the inset values, but the content size doesn't change. So why might you want to adjust content insets? You've already seen how to change the insets to center a subview in a scroll view. Insets are also helpful when you want to keep content on screen even when iOS brings up the keyboard. In this video, we'll use insets to leave space for navigation bars and toolbars. We're going to be playing around with content insets, and to do that, we're using the Flappy Felipe About screen again.
A common reason you'll want to manage the content inset of your scroll views is if you're using a navigation controller. We don't have one of those yet, but it's easy to add one. Select the About view controller, and then in the Embed menu, embed in a navigation controller. Select this About view controller here, and in the Attributes Inspector, you can see we have Adjust Scroll View Insets as an option under top bars and under bottom bars. Let's do some experimentation to see what these do. But first, we need to actually see the bottom bar, so select the navigation controller, and in the Attributes Inspector, check Shows Toolbar. Now we've got a toolbar at the bottom. Select the About scene again and uncheck all 3 of those boxes. Adjust Scroll View Insets under top bars and under bottom bars. So you can see we still have our About right here, and if we run this, you can see we're not getting any translucence at all. Now try checking under top bar and under bottom bars again. There's no change at all in the editor here, and if we were to build the app again, we'd see the same thing. Why?
That's because our scroll view is constrained to the safe area, which isn't affected by these settings. What is affected is the root view. To get the translucent effect from the top and bottom bars, select the scroll view, go to the size inspector, and double-click on the top constraint. Change the second item from safe area to super view, and the constant to 0. And you should immediately see a change here in the editor. Our Flappy Felipe title is hidden under that navigation bar. Now do the same thing for the bottom constraint on the scroll view. And you'll see a less obvious change. But if you build and run, you'll see that translucence at work on both the top and bottom.
The translucence is good, but we want to be able to see that Flappy Felipe title when the app starts, and it's obscured by the navigation bar when the app loads. Back in Interface Builder, select the About scene and recheck that Adjust Scroll View Insets box in the Attributes Inspector. Again, you'll see that change immediately in the editor, and if you build and run, you'll see it working in the simulator as well.
This is pretty good, but that Flappy Felipe is still too close to the navigation bar for my taste.
If this isn't exactly what you want, and you want to adjust the insets further, you can do that. It will require a little bit of code and an outlet to the scroll view. Open up viewcontroller.swift with Shift-Command-O, and see that we've already set up that outlet for you. Here in View2Load, you can see how that Flappy Felipe animation is working if you're interested. Just above all of that is where we'll adjust the scroll view's content insets. Access FG Scroll View's content inset property. And set it to a new UI edge insets with 20 points for the top and 0 for the rest. Build and run the app.
Check it out! The adjustments to the content inset property work along with the automatic inset adjustment of the view controller.